Analyzing tunes is just what I do every time I play. I'm doing it in real time, and that's the difference between read-remember skills, what I call re skills, and real-time skills of a jazz musician. In other words, processing the chord progressions as they go past, so you can rely on your understanding of what to do with language in those situations in real time, rather than over-rehearsing everything, trying to play it and trying to remember it, and not really speaking the language. So today I thought we'll take a tune, relatively simple tune actually, and talk about how it works harmonically, linguistically. Now, you may know I teach on 3 levels. So 1 is just learning the basic chord progressions and getting started with jazz. 2 is a few tunes, but no real freedom. And then 3 is more advanced and fluent and may even be performing, that sort of thing. Often level 2s will perceive these skills that we're going to talk about as slowing them down. Isn't it quicker for me to play the tune if I just look at the chords, or if I copy someone, or if I do something else? But that's not what we're doing. We're not saying how can you get to putting your fingers in the right place the quickest. You've tried that long enough. Now we're talking about what is the language really doing, so you can free up and improvise and understand that when you play one tune in one key, it's got the same ingredients as a different tune in a different key. So you don't want to end up with 1,000 data points that are disconnected. You want to end up with the language being spoken in the same way in all these different situations. So let's begin. We're going to look at I Can't Give You Anything But Love. Probably heard that before, right? Okay, not even important how it sounds. What's important in this lesson is how it works. Key of G. So if we're going to work in the key of G, the very first thing we should know is chords 1 to 7 in G, right? So G major scale, I guess that's the very first thing we should know properly. And if we don't, we need to get that right. Just going up and down the scale isn't enough. Do things like broken thirds. Don't stop just because you hit the G. Every note deserves a pattern. That one as well, right? Often people use the F natural by mistake, even when they've played for a long time. So we should then know the chords in G. G major 7, A minor 7, B minor 7, C major 7, D7 or D dominant 7, E minor 7, F sharp minor 7 flat 5. Back to G major 7. Now what I'm going to do, there are several ways I approach this, but today the way I'm going to do it is say I'm going to mark everything that is in the key of G. So G6 will be in the key of G because G6, 1, 3, 5, and 6, okay, of a G major scale. So that's in the key of G. B flat diminished won't be because there's no B flat in G. This is 2, 5 in G. A minor D7, so that is same on the next line. D minor is not. G7, some people think it is. It is not. G major 7 would be. C, and kind of C major will be. A7 won't. A minor and D7 will. That's the first half. The reason I marked the first half is this is an A-B tune. If you're wondering how I decide what the form is, because some books will say things like, oh, that's an A, that's another A, that's got to be a B, hasn't it? Something, they put so many sections in that there's no point trying to organize your life through sections and give your tune more organization, because you've just taken everything and marked it into a section. So normally I will say, look, until I have that melody line again, that and those chords, I don't have a new section. I know some of you are saying, but hold on, doesn't that happen here? Yes, it does. This is quite unusual. But I just know through experience that tunes tend to be either A, or A-B. I wouldn't chop up anything smaller than 8 bars. So I'm not going to have 2 4-bar sections and say this is an A and this is an A. It just wouldn't be practical, okay? So therefore, that's our A, that's our B. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm just looking at that first A section. I'm going to say, where do the chords come from that leads to these places? Do they lead to these places? So in other words, I'm going to take things like this B flat diminished and say, well, it goes to A minor. Is there a reason for that? Happens twice. This G7 goes to C. Is there a reason for that? Is there a reason for this D minor 7 to go to G7? All that kind of thing. So let's find out. So this is called a flat 3 diminished, little circle sign for diminished, all right? And flat 3 diminished, you've heard a million times before. Maybe you know the name, maybe you don't. In the key of G, B flat diminished leads to A minor, right? Other tunes that do that, you will have probably heard Embraceable You. Goes 1, flat 3 diminished, 2, It doesn't have to go to 2, but it normally does, okay? Another one that comes to mind is smoke gets in your eyes. Remember this for later, it's just shown me something. We'll come back to that. Okay, that's the thing we should learn in language, and it happens again here. Flat 3 diminished to 2, flat 3 diminished to 2, right? So that's a language thing. If we don't know that, there's kind of no point learning the tune because we don't know what the language is doing. We're never going to get to playing these things more than one way without knowing that we can apply our linguistic tools for these things, our improvisation, I don't want to say improvisation patterns, but improvisation methods, that sort of thing. If you're enjoying this lesson, would you please give it a like and subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when there's a new video. A positive comment in the comments section really helps as well. And if it's time to level up your playing and get some freedom, then consider joining us on Jazz Skills. More about that at the end. For now, let's get back to the lesson. Okay, next one. Is there a reason for G7 to go to C? Yes, because it's the fifths lead to things. So that is something I expect. So G7 to C, yes. When I have a dominant like that, I'll also go back a chord and say, does that make a 2-5 that leads me to C? And yes, it does, because in C, D is 2, G is 5, right? So I'll put my 2-5s in brackets if they go to something other than the 1 in G, right? So this I would call a 2-5 to the 4th degree of G. And of course, you're going to be in the key of C and get that same progression because C is in the key of C. So you'll get the D-7 to G7 before a C major as well. Finally, for this section, why would A7 go to A minor? It's because A minor to D7 is 2-5 in our original key. And if you've ever heard me talk about this or Barry Harris talk about this, my teacher, you will know that 2-5 functions as a 5. Okay, we can't get too deep into that in this lesson because it'll go on forever if we do. But 2-5 just means 5. So in other words, the function here is D7. And then it makes perfect sense to me that A7 would go to D7 because it's the fifth of it. So that now makes a lot more functional sense to me. That's our A section. If you now look at B, I'm just going to cross out anything we've dealt with already. This stuff is all the same. It changes here. And then we get another 2-5-1. That's no big deal. So that's the last section to talk about. That C sharp, is it C sharp diminished? Yes. And it's coming from a C. So of course, if you have C and then nothing, then this is also C and this is also C, right? So all these will be Cs. This one it can be explained in several ways. Today, I'm going to take the Barry Harris sort of way of explaining it, okay? Which is this diminished or any diminished. If you move any two consecutive notes, two notes next to each other, up or down, you will get major sixes. Now, this is even the outside two are next to each other because the diminished inverts and just becomes another diminished, right? So B flat and C sharp are next to each other. If I move those up, I would get G6 or E-7, of course. If I move them down, I would get C6, an inversion of C6, right? So sometimes what we do is we start on the C6. You will have heard this sound before. Up to the diminished, and then G6, E7, 2-5-1. I'm sure you've heard that kind of thing before. So that's what we get here. We get this C to C sharp diminished, that move to a G. It doesn't say G6, but I can play a G6 there. E7, which is now we're getting a 1-6, 2-5, very common progression in jazz. The 6 happens to be a dominant. E7, also very, very common in jazz. And then we get another 1-2-5 to take us back to the beginning. That's how the tune works. Once you know that, I feel that the best thing to do is just comp. Just play chords. And learn to do that if you can in a couple of keys. So if I did it in C, it would be 1, flat 3 diminished, 2-5. Then you're going to really know the tune in the original key because you're now playing from a linguistic perspective, not a I've got to remember where my fingers go perspective. I said to you that I would talk to you about smoke gets in your eyes, didn't I? So the reason I mentioned that is because we had two things that were in common. So smoke gets in your eyes has this progression, and it also has this progression in it, 2-5 to 4. So it goes 1 flat 3 diminished 2-5, but it's in a different key. Doesn't matter. So it'll go 1 in E flat, flat 3 diminished, which is G flat diminished, F minor B flat 7. Now 2 5 to it's 4. Now it doesn't matter if you're not following every chord, but the point I'm making is, because I've really understood what I'm doing in I Can't Give You Anything But Love, when I play another tune from its linguistic perspective, I've got things that are basically the same, not a million things that are different. So anything I'm learning applies to all these things. If you want to up your game with harmonic analysis, with getting fluent in the first place, we've got a whole developing fluency course for you on jazz skills. And then I'll show you about voicings, about playing your right hand melodies, improvisation, chord movements, accompanying, loads more. We've got a great community and there's help from me as well. So I hope to see you there. Thanks for watching. Hope you learned something and see you soon. Bye for now.